said that he'd be willing to carry out military strikes on drug facilities in Mexico and in Colombia if necessary. It was just last week that Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the U.S. did not plan to send any sort of American troops into Mexico, but would potentially provide Mexico with some support if they requested it. Well, U.S. forces, they have carried out multiple strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats in international waters.
Would I launch strikes in Mexico to stop drugs? It's okay with me. Whatever we have to do to stop drugs. Colombia has cocaine factories where they make cocaine. Would I knock out those factories? I would be proud to do it personally. I didn't say I'm doing it, but I would be proud to do it.
Ana Maria Salazar is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Drug Enforcement Policy and Support, joining us from Mexico City. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Greetings from Mexico City.
So, Ana Maria, hours later, I'm curious if there's been any sort of response from Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum to Monday's comments from the Oval Office.
Not yet, but I'm sure we will hear some comment or statement from the Mexican government during her daily press conference. And perhaps the best way to react to that comment is not to react. I mean, President Sheinbaum has been pretty smart in not negotiating with President Donald Trump publicly. When he makes these types of statements, she usually just reminds everybody that Mexico is a sovereign nation and that the United States and Mexico have very good cooperation, especially on security matters. But we'll see. I mean, I'm sure there's many Mexican officials that are alarmed.
I read elsewhere on another platform that this should be taken as Trump opening the door for possible military action against cartel elements in Mexico. I'm not sure if that's accurate. I mean, it feels like we've been here before, going back to 2017 when the president did issue similar threats to the Mexican government that he planned to go after cartel elements across the border. But something seems different this time, I believe. You have the strikes on the targets in the Caribbean. Because of that, do you think that Mexican officials could perhaps assume that Trump could be more inclined to actually deliver on that threat this time?
Well, I guess part of the problem is there was one strike on one of these fast boats at the close to Mexican coast. In Acapulco, but it was still in international waters. And I think it was that particular case that has made the Mexican military quite nervous. And there was statements by the Mexican government saying, if you want us to go after these fast boats, give us the intelligence and we will detain them, arrest the individuals, seize the drugs, and if necessary, we will take them to trial. But so Mexico has been making statements like that. I think the only difference between 2017 and now has to do what's happening in the Caribbean and the threats to Venezuela and kind of this. I think most countries in the Caribbean basin are quite nervous and kind of frustrated to have such a large presence to go after fast boats. So there is this confusion. If that was the strategy, you don't need to have that level of military presence of the United States. So I think there's kind of this sense that is the statements by the president somewhat of I don't want to use the word show, but it's kind of a way to pressure Nicolás Maduro to basically either surrender, turn himself in, or try to find a peaceful way to leave the country and take all his assets and his family. Now, with the statement today, I don't know if it's much different. The only thing that I see different was his comment that things seem to be a little different or a little bad in Mexico because we had major protests that took place Saturday, in which there was an interesting level of violence that perhaps this president had not suffered. Protests were not only young people, but people or individuals from all types of backgrounds who are concerned either about security, not having access to health care, and of course the murder of mayors and politicians from the opposition. So that was kind of the only difference that I saw from his comments. But clearly there has to be a certain level of nervousness trying to understand what does Donald Trump want to do. I don't think anybody's concerned that he's going to invade Mexico. I think they're just concerned he's going to send some missile or drone to destroy labs. And of course, then there's there's a couple legal issues that even I'm sure those Pentagon officials, Pentagon lawyers that are still left in the Pentagon are wondering, how legal are these attacks? One, and two, there is a concern that any attack on Mexican soil, you could kill an American citizen or have an impact on U.S. interests. So it's a little different than what is happening with the threats to Venezuela. But I can tell you that I'm sure Mexican officials are watching these statements very, very closely.
I'm just curious if you could characterize the relationship between these two nations, between the U.S. and Mexico right now, from tariff talk to the White House's insistence insisting that Mexico is not doing enough to control the flow of drugs going north. I mean, is it fair to characterize it as somewhat delicate right now, that relationship?
I would say it's a working relationship. Mexico is pretty much willing to do what it takes right now to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't decide to send a missile into Mexico. The problem is, what does Donald Trump want out of this? I mean, he pretty much he's gotten what he has wanted from the Mexican government, and the Mexican strategy has dramatically changed. And there has been some successes in terms, at least the numbers seem to indicate that there's less fentanyl crossing into the United States right now. And there's literally the number of migrants that have been crossing into the United States have completely stopped. So it's not clear what else Donald Trump needs. And I would see his statement as somewhat a position he's taking as Mexico, the United States, and Canada head towards the renegotiation of the trade agreement, USMCA, which is an agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And maybe this is starting to position a different way of pressuring Mexico.
Yeah. Well, along with you, we'll be watching closely as the Mexican president heads to the podium later today for her daily press conference to see if she addresses those comments from the Oval Office. Ana Maria Salazar from Mexico City, thank you so much for your time and your insight.